Thank you, Carol. I would like to invite my younger friends to join me down front for a special interactive time for all ages today. You can also stay where you are if you would like. But it's always good to see your faces, or at least the top parts of them. So I have a really hard question. How many of you like Marvel movies? Some of you like Marvel movies. How many of you guys like Marvel movies? Any DC fans out there? All right, yeah, they're all like, yes. The few, the proud. Percy Jackson. Yes. Harry Potter. Yeah, okay. Multi-generational, very nice. Gandalf. Merlin. Yeah. We all have our favorite characters. How many of you already know which superpower you would choose if you could choose a superpower? Mine changes, but it's a good question, right? What would you say if I told you that you already have a superpower? But it's true. And that you will get a chance to use it during the service. Yeah? So I'm going to tell you a very short story from the Jewish storytelling tradition about this superpower, and then I want you to try and guess what the superpower is. There were some students of a particular rabbi, the Rabbi Baal Shem Tov, and they came to him one day and they said, every year we travel a long way to learn from you, and nothing could stop us from ever wanting to come and learn from you. But we have also learned of a man in our town who claims to be a learned and righteous man. If he is genuinely a learned and righteous person, we would like to profit from his wisdom as well. We would like to have him teach us as well. But here's our question: how will we know if he is a fake? Right? Because anybody can say that they are learned and righteous. As we know, the internet has made this much easier to do. But how will we know if someone who says that is really as wise as they say? So the Baal Shem Tov looked at his earnest students and he said, you must test him by asking him a question. He paused, he asked them, so you guys have all had some difficulty with stray thoughts during prayers, yes? And they all said, yes, we do. We try and think only of our intentions and the words of the prayer, but other thoughts come into our minds. I have this problem when I try and meditate or focus on anything, frankly. So students said, we have tried many methods, but nothing can keep us from having stray thoughts during our prayers. And the Rabbi Baal Shem Tov said, good. Ask him the way to stop such thoughts from entering your minds. If he has an answer, he is a fake. So can you guess what your superpower is? You want to give it a shot? Questions! Was that what you were going to say too? Oh, what was your guess? Wisdom. Our kids, you guys are so smart. You guys are so smart. It's because you come here, right? Yeah, I thought so.
Because I do division at my school.
You do division at your school. That is something that is still really hard for me to do, even though I'm a grown-up. So there are two lessons. One is that wisdom is really important, and that there are some things that even the wise don't know the answer to. And the other is that our superpower is asking questions. So this is a special service we do once a year, where during the homily, the adults in the congregation will get to have their questions answered by me, to the best of my abilities. Most of you were given a slip of paper when you came in. If you were not, raise your hand, and probably one of the ushers can bring. You guys are going to get the chance to ask me questions in person right now. But for the adults who will be answering questions later in the service, go ahead and write down your question if you know it, and if you don't, think about it for a little bit, and we'll collect them a little bit later in the service. But for you guys, You don't have to write your questions down. You can just ask me. So what are some questions that you guys have that I could answer? I could try and answer. This is the scariest part of the service, by the way, just so you guys all know, because kids have the best questions. So what are y'all's big questions or little questions? What you got?
Well, when you're doing your job, how long have you done this?
How long have I done this? That's a really great question. So I have been the minister here at Northwoods for almost 4 years, and this was my first ministry job. I was in seminary for 7 years before that, which is not normal. Usually people take 2 or 3 years, but I was working and doing it part-time. So I've been doing this for 4 years. Thank you for asking. What's your question? How many religions are there in the world? Oh man, I don't know that anybody can answer that question because there are new religions coming up all the time, and there are old religions that are no longer being practiced, that are going out of practice, and people trying to bring back new religions all the time. When we think about the big religions of the world, we think about Christianity, we think about Islam, we think about Hinduism, we think about Judaism, and we think about Buddhism. Did I say Buddhism? Okay, and Buddhism. Those are kind of the 5 biggest ones. But then even within those, there are many different kinds of Buddhism. And in Hinduism, there are many different deities that are all worshipped differently. And people have different shrines to those deities in their homes. There are several different forms of Judaism that I know of, and probably some that I don't. And the same is true of Islam. And since we have many, many Christian people in this country, we can probably think of 4 or 5 different kinds of Christian religions off the top of our heads, right? We could think of the Methodists and the Episcopalians and the non-denominational and the Baptists and the Southern Baptists, the American Baptists, and the Lutherans and the other Lutherans, Missouri Synod, and So I don't know how many religions there are in the world, because even when you think about the big religions that have millions of people, even those religions have many different religions within them. So that is a question I do not know the answer to. That's how you know I'm not a fake. Thanks, Jack. Do y'all have any other questions? What's your question?
What's your favorite part about being a minister?
What's my favorite part? I'm glad it wasn't a long division question, because I'm not as good at those. What is my favorite part of being a minister? Well, this part is pretty great. I really like talking to you guys. I would say my favorite part of being a minister is what we do together every Sunday morning. And also the getting ready for that. Because although I'm the one that stands up here and I get the microphone most of the time, there are so many awesome people that I get to work with when I create worship. We have our tech folks. We have Brenda over here, and we have our folks up in the tech booth. We have our awesome musicians, my worship arts team, Rusty, my right-hand dude, and all of you. We couldn't do it without you. This is my favorite part of being a minister. You got another one, Jack? What's this? Oh, that's another great question. These guys are great. This is called our We Worship space. And Miss Gaylin put this together because sometimes people come to church and they have little kids, kids that are maybe like 2, 3, 4 years old. And they're kind of fidgety. They like to play, they like to move around. And so we have some books, and we have some games and puzzles and some activities. So anybody who comes to the service that has a little one, 4 years or younger, hopefully they feel very welcome to come and sit up here in this first row and let their kids play up here on this rug with some of our activities. Because we want to be a place and a congregation that is welcoming to all different types of families and all different kinds of people. I think you're probably a little bit too old for the We Worship, but I think you may have some siblings that are just the right age. So maybe we'll see them up here sometime. Cool. Thank you. Any more questions? You guys have great questions. And you adults better be thinking hard if you're going to top these kids, because these are good questions. Well, the beauty of questions is you don't ever have to stop asking them. Jack, you got another one.
How old is this church?
How old is this church? This church is 40-something years old. I think it's a little bit older than me. And that's actually pretty young for a church. A lot of the churches that you might go to have been around for much, much longer than that. Somebody's got the right idea. So I know to you, 40-something seems pretty old. That's fair. I remember thinking that too, but now I'm 40-something, so it doesn't feel nearly as old. But you're right, we've been around a long time. We even have a few people in the congregation who remember those very early years. And sometimes we invite them to come up here and tell some of those stories of our history. So I hope you get to hear some of those. Thanks. I'm slightly embarrassed that I cannot remember the actual date that Northwoods began, but I do know that's about how old we are. I'll get back to you on the actual date, because dates are important. 78. Okay. Yes, the church is slightly older than I am, but not by much. So 1978. Thank you to someone with a good memory back there. I appreciate it. Well, the beauty of questions is that you can never stop asking them. So even if you don't have a question for me right now, if you have a question for me later or on another Sunday, I hope you will ask it, because I love to talk to you and hear what's on your mind, and questions are a great way to do that. For anybody out here in the congregation, as we sing our centering song here in a minute, Greg will be going around with the actual question box for the question box service. If you've got your answer written, if you wouldn't mind passing those to the ends of the aisles so that Greg can collect them easily. If you don't have your question written down yet, don't worry. You'll have you can think about it for a little bit, and when we pass the offering basket later in the service, just put your question in there, and hopefully our ushers will be kind enough to add those to the question box as well. Oh, one more. Yeah? Two more. Okay. Cool. We'll do that. What you got?
What's your favorite thing to do?
What's my favorite thing to do? I love to float in my swimming pool. That's my very favorite thing to do, which is why I like this time of year. Yes, Jack?
How much did it cost to get all that music equipment?
How much did it cost to get all that music equipment? More than my budget. You know, because we got all the microphones and we got a great big grand piano. That was probably pretty expensive. It's been here a long time, so it's probably paid for. But I don't know. I do know that any musical instrument that I've ever went to buy was pretty expensive. So I'm guessing a lot. Yes?
How much did this whole church cost?
How much did this whole church cost? Wow, I don't remember. I wasn't here for that. But I do know that this building was built by this church, right? Before we were in our building here, we were the first ones to be in this building. We were the ones that built it and put it on this land. And I do know that we took out a pretty good mortgage to do that, and then we paid it off, and we had a big party. I was not here for any of that, but I imagine that some of you guys were. And it was a pretty big deal. If you've ever paid off a mortgage or a car loan, you know it's a moment worth celebrating. And that was a big moment in Northwoods when we paid off the mortgage and owned it ourselves. But I don't know how much it was for. My guess is also a lot, probably more than the musical instruments. Thank you guys for your questions.